What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 123 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're chatting UFC Vegas 69. We got Jessica Andrade taking on Aaron Blanchfield. Lags out. He's out at work today. He's going to be working late. So I got my boy Andrew Gombas in the house here. You can follow him on Twitter at Bets and Picks MMA. You can follow me on Twitter, MMA Fox. Andrew, what's going on? You looking forward to this card?
Yeah, what's going on, bro? Thanks for having me. And yeah, I don't love this card from an entertainment perspective, but from a betting perspective, there's a ton of stuff that I'll have action on. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's not horrible. I mean, it is funny though, right? Like a lot of these fights where we say, or these cards where we say we don't like it from an entertainment perspective, end up delivering because low level guys just seem to finish a lot more often than high level fighters. So, but yeah, I mean, let's just jump right into it then. First fight of the night, we got Juan Camilo Ronderos. He's taking on Clayton Carpenter. Do you have any passionate thoughts here?
Yeah, I like the over a good amount. I was surprised to see it at like plus 140. I kind of felt like even money or even slightly lean towards the over outright. I just don't feel like Carpenter's that. I don't think he prioritizes a finish enough for him to be to get this much finishing equity in a flyweight fight. Ronderos doesn't go away. His cardio seems good. Like I definitely favor Clayton to win. I think he's better, but I don't really see him finishing this at a super high clip. So from a betting perspective, I like the over. From a picks perspective, I like Carpenter.
Yeah, I agree. I've thought about playing the over. I haven't. I mean, there was a lot of early movement in this fight towards the Ronderos side. And I was kind of thinking it might get down to like the minus 200 range, in which case I would have been interested in Carpenter. He's back to minus 300 now, so not really interested at that number. But I do think he's pretty clearly the better fighter here. Obviously, Ronderos has a victory against Eric Shelton, but frankly, rewatching that fight, I sort of felt as if Shelton gave that fight away more than Ronderos winning it. He just didn't do much with very dominant positions throughout the fight. I just think these guys are on different levels. Neither guy is the best defense, but I think Carpenter's faster. I think he hits harder. I think he's the better grappler. I just ultimately think Carpenter's probably a bit better everywhere. I think his level of competition outside of the Sheldon fight's probably similar. So, yeah, I think he's a side, but I mean, this is a super low level fight. I'm with you. Like, if anything, I take the over. Moving on, we got AJ Fletcher, Demba Garimbo. Anything here for you? I know you and I talked about this a bit earlier in the week.
Yeah, we were both pretty bummed that the line is what it is because I think we looked into it before the odds came out and we're kind of like, oh, this should be a really good spot for Fletcher. Like he's kind of lost a couple and the market might be a little low on him, but it seems like everyone kind of just caught on to the fact that Garimbo isn't UFC level. So I like Fletcher from a picks perspective, from a betting perspective. Not the kind of guy I'm dying to lay minus 250 or higher on just because he's defensively void. Suspect cardio a little bit, but I think he should be fine here. I'm definitely picking him to get it done. I think if he just grapples, he'll top 10 pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I was I mean, even the early line, like minus 200, I was like, oh, that's not bad. I would take minus 200, but I never really got on any of the books that I have access to an ability to play it there. Minus 250, with the cardio issues of Fletcher, it's like, how can you really take the dive at that price? Even though I think on the surface, from a skill set perspective, I think Fletcher probably is like a minus 500 skill set against Garimbo. I just don't trust him down the stretch in a fight. But all of that said, you watch Garimbo's tape, I just don't see a lot to like from him. He's almost like, it's funny because like I watched his first fight I watched of him. He came out striking and I was like, okay, lanky striker, that makes sense. But then you watch the rest of his tape and he's just like a really active grappler who's not very good at it. And I can't really imagine him having much success grappling Fletcher. I can't really imagine him having much success standing with Fletcher. Pepe mentioned it in the chat, and I was thinking about the under, but I'm curious your opinion as this, Andrew. I'm almost a bit spooked by the line. Like the under is minus 150 on the under 2.5, and like it seems fairly off to me. But I also like, how for an AJ Fletcher fight is it minus 150? Like, am I missing something here with it? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely lean that side. I do think it is possible that Fletcher just kind of top times him though. Like it seems like Garimbo is an okay enough grappler where he's not just going to be like insta subbed on the mat. But I do think this fight does finish more often than that. Also, just with like Fletcher's defensive liability on the feet,
Yeah.
kind of hard to get to an over being worse than like, or sorry, an under being much better than minus 150 because it's just he's either going to get a lot of top time and he'll have his chances on the ground, or he could find. I mean, he could find a finish on the feet too. Like Garimbo is not much of a striker, but yeah, I don't know. I do think Fletcher top times him at a decent clip without finishing, but I think he finishes more often than that. I know we talk about this one, or did you bet this?
This fight, the under?
Yeah, the under. I can't remember. I know we talked.
I haven't bet it. I've been thinking about it, but it's I really hate these lines where it's like in my head when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, how is it not minus 200, minus 250? And then it's like sitting there without a lot of action on it at minus 150. It always kind of like, I know we do these shows and we talk about betting because we don't think MMA is an efficient market, but I do think sometimes, especially with some of these chalky unders, it's more efficient than people realize. Like, you don't often find like unders that should be minus 500 priced at minus 150, No,
I think if anything, once in a while you'll find an over that should be priced like that. Just because people tend to like unders more, but very rarely is there an under where it's like grossly mispriced. Like the only one I can think of off the top of my head is last year. I bet the under in Andre Fili versus the Brazilian, who I can't think of.
Oh, Brito.
Yeah, and that was I bet that at plus 165, and I was like, how is this not minus 200? And I mean, we only saw one iteration of the fight, and it went way under, obviously. But I remember going into that. That's like the last time I can remember a total being like that off.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, interesting fight here. We got Ovince St. Preux, perhaps his swan song, taking on Felipe Lins. I actually like OSP a fair amount here. I have 2 units on him at like plus 190. I actually think the line's fine where it is here. I also kind of like the under here, though I haven't played it. Personal opinion is just Felipe Lins. I mean, if he was a 26-year-old who had the tape that he had and the record in the UFC he had, I'd be going nowhere near this fight. But, OSP is 39, and that's the big concern here. Lins is 37, though. This guy is not like a young fighter who's like on the come up, who I expect to be making improvements. If anything, I'd expect him to be on the decline. And like I look at the tape between these two guys, and I guess my view is, if they exchange in the pocket a lot, Lynch has a pretty strong chance to knock him out, but he doesn't, cover distance very well. He doesn't cut the cage very well. He seems to be the kind of guy that needs you to give him the fight he wants. And like OSP is just not going to engage him in the pocket. That's not really his game. He's going to throw body kicks. He's going to try to counter on the way in. And that's what he'll do. And like Lins may try to grapple him. I know he tried last fight against Prachnio, but it's like people are comparing Marcin Prachnio to Ovince St. Preux. And I know St. Preux is 39, and we'll talk about Marcin Prachnio a bit later in this fight, but or in this card, but I don't really see the comparison between the two. OSP's gone 5 rounds with guys like Ryan Bader, John Jones. This is not someone who you just come in and wash in the grappling. That's just never really been the case. And Lynn's not being able to even he had grappling success with Prachnio, but he didn't dominate the fight. And so I kind of think it's going to stay on the feet. And as much as him going into a split with Shogun gives me some pause, you have to think about it, I think, in the context that Preux likes to counter, and Shogun, outside of a couple blitzes, kind of just let him play his game on the back foot and throw kicks. And he's going to do that with anybody. He's never going to be the aggressive guy like an Ihor Boteria who goes forward and swarms you. So I do think too much stock's being put into that. Ultimately, I look at it and it's like 37-year-old Felipe Lins. He's 1-2 in the UFC. His best win's Prachnio. He's pulled out of 10 fights against OSP, who's 39, but who's got nearly double the experience. He's fought way better competition. Like this would literally be his worst loss in about 15 years. To me, it should be evens at worst. I think minutes are competitive. I think both guys have the ability to knock each other out here. I like OSP. Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely make a compelling case. I'm just not as passionate about it. OSP turning 40 in a couple months. He's been finished in 2 out of his last 3 fights. Again, that win being a split decision over Shogun, which you were actually at my house for that fight, if you remember. I remember watching that being like, I think Shogun might be winning or like in this fight, but like neither of us were paying attention because like no one had a bet on it or anything, I don't think. But yeah, I remember like at the time thinking to myself, okay, OSP is completely done. And you look at and I still feel that way. And you look at the Lynn side, and you obviously already covered this, him pulling out of a bunch of fights. He's no spring chicken either at 37 years old. He's lost 2 out of his last 3, got finished by Bozier. I mean, he only has 1 win since January 1st, 2019. So like that's a pretty long time. Like he has a win over Marcin Prachnio, who I'm low on, which you mentioned we'll talk about later. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's a little less shot. I think he's a little bit more enthusiasm on the feet. So I'm picking him to win. Like I would probably make him a small and medium favorite with low conviction. I don't think either guy has a ton of grappling success here. It's just not a fight I necessarily am passionate about. So if I were to bet this fight, I would bet Oven St. Preux, but I'm not betting this fight as of right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on, we got an interesting one here. Jamal Emmers, he's coming on back off of losing me a fair chunk of change against Pat Sabatini, and he's taking on Hussein Askabov, who is a debutant from Russia. Curious what your thoughts are here. Anything for you?
You should start this one because I think you have a stronger opinion on it than I do.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's funny because like I do have like my semi-strong opinions more based on uncertainty than anything else. I did bet Emmers plus 138 here. I think the line now is trending towards correct, but I mean Askabov to me, he's just like a giant unknown. You have this guy who's got 3 years off, previously fought at bantamweight. His tape's not bad. Like I don't think it's horrible or anything, but the level of competition he was fighting was, I mean, outright atrocious. And honestly, for someone fighting that level, I kind of would have expected him, given that he is a grappling base, to be more successful against that level than he has been. And yeah, he's undefeated, but some of those fights, I don't want to say were sweaty, but they were closer than they should have been for guys who were basically just regional bums. And so, yeah, I mean, he could be really good. I know you mentioned somebody that you know said that they had some data about him who believed that he was the real deal. But to me, it's like, the range of what Askabov could be is anywhere from bad to below average UFC fighter to really, really good. Whereas Emmers, I think Emmers is a pretty good fighter. He comes from a wrestling background. He's fought a very high level of competition and fought pretty competitively with like everybody he's fought pretty much. He's a good striker. He's a good wrestler. He's big for the division. He's fighting a guy who's a former 135er. Like I view Emmers as a above average UFC fighter and who's got real experience. And so with that being the dynamic, I feel like I have to favor Emmers in this spot slightly. So I'm not passionate. If Askabov comes out and is just better, okay. But I feel like there's as much, if not more likely, that Askabov is absolutely awful. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't really feel strongly either way. I feel like there's some big red flags on both these guys. Like on the Askabov fight, the Askabov side, you kind of touched on the fact that he hasn't really fought anyone, and he hasn't fought in 3 years. Like that's a long time. But also from 25 to 28, you could potentially make some serious improvements. I mean, he's 23-0, so it's not like he lacks experience. He trains in a good gym. So I expect him to be pretty good. Like he did finish his last 3 fights in the first round. The one before that was in the second round. He beat a guy who Desme, who I'm relatively familiar with from Cage Warriors, and that was a decision. So like I think he could go all 3 rounds. On the Emmers side, the big red flag for me too. One would be fight IQ. Obviously, in his last fight, we touched on him just going to the ground with Sabatini for no reason. If you remember back to the Chikadze fight, he didn't prioritize wrestling like a lot of people wanted him to. So I don't like his fight IQ. And also he got his knee ripped up by Sabatini a year and a half ago. So he's coming off an injury layoff himself. It's just a fight that I'm likely going to stay away from. And whatever happens. I won't be mad at passing.
Yeah, that's honestly, I was, to be completely honest, I'm not passionate about it. And I was thinking of passing, but then I look at the market and it's like the entire market had cratered, but like 2 books had like plus 130 and plus 135 still there. So I was like, I mean, I do think he's the side. If I'm going to beat the line by 25 cents by default, I'm going to put money on it. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Moving on, Lena Landsberg, Myra Bueno Silva. I bet over here. I don't feel strongly about it, but Landsberg and Silva. I mean, Silva should kill her, right? I do think she's going to fuck her up pretty badly, but I look at it and it's like Landsberg's only been finished twice in her career or 3 times in her career, but it's all been on the mat. Myra doesn't really grapple proactively ever. She's got a bunch of arm bars, but she's never the one taking women down. And so it's a question to me of, well, is Lena's chin dust enough that Myra finishes her? And I don't know, maybe it is, but is it, I mean, can you say she finishes at like a 40-45% clip here? I don't think you can get near that. She doesn't have a single knockout in her career, even though I think she hits hard. I don't think she's going to pursue grappling actively. And even at the best of times, Myra is fairly low volume. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a WMMA fight. I think minus 150 to minus 200 is kind of generous for the over here. What do you think?
I lean over as well. I just like Landsberg's about to turn 41, and I feel like she's just looked very, very shot. And I get that Bueno Silva isn't necessarily high volume. She does hit pretty hard, though. She does have some submissions on her record, so it wouldn't like she armbarred. I mean, she basically has an armbar, but she armbarred some pretty solid grapplers with it. Like Stephanie Egger is no joke. Jillian Robertson. She has the finish over Mara Barella as well. So it wouldn't surprise me like if she hit an armbar here. I don't really think there's any finishing upside on the Landsberg side. So it's pretty much like literally like pretty close to 0, honestly. But yeah, I think over probably hits. I think Myra should be fine in this spot. It really just depends how much she wants to pursue it.
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying, though, because it's like, I agree she could hit an armbar. She could even knock her out. But is it more than like 25%? I don't know. That's kind of weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. I don't disagree. I think over is probably the side.
Moving on, though, Nazim Sadykov, he's coming off Contender Series. He's taking out Evan Elder. What are your thoughts here?
I like under 2.5 here. I bet it at plus money. I kind of feel like both of them don't have great defense. Both hit decently hard. Elder coming down from 170 back to his real weight of 155, which I think will benefit him a little bit more. And also, I feel like that might have swayed the market's opinion on his ability to finish and be finished in a fight because Parsons kind of just dominated him. And yeah, it was a short notice fight up a weight. I think this one's going to be a little bit more of a banger. I do favor Nadim, but it's not like super confident. I just think he's a little bit more well put together. But I do like under here. I'm curious what you have.
I have nothing, honestly. I had a really hard time getting a read here because, I mean, both guys pre-UFC have fought really nobody. I guess Sadakov's best opponent is the dude he fought on Contender Series, who, I mean, basically ate one body kick and was kind of a corpse for the rest of that fight. And Elder, obviously his best opponent is Parsons, but he was up a weight class on short notice. He was just kind of hopelessly outmatched size-wise. I guess I'm with you. I think Sadykov probably is a bit, I mean, he's more diverse for sure, and I think he's very likely more dangerous in this kind of a fight. But I don't know. Like, I don't think Elder's bad. I think he's an okay prospect. I kind of just expect it's going to be relatively competitive. I guess since I do kind of think Sadakov's more likely to finish, I do lean the side being right. I guess if I was going to do anything, I'd go under as well. But I don't know. I found a really hard time at getting a read on it. Like, it's really hard to, watch 2 or 3 of Nazim's fights against guys with a combined record of 3 or 13 and feel very passionate about what his power is going to look like at this level. And by the same token, I felt similarly about Elder. So it's just a pass for me. But I think it's going to be a competitive fight. Moving on, I'll stick with you here. We got Alexander, now the great ape, formerly the great Hernandez, taking on New Jersey's own Jim Miller. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a really good fight for Hernandez. He's more athletic than Miller. He's stronger. I think he's better technically. The gripe with Hernandez in the past has been the fact that he wilts / doesn't have the best cardio, but Jim Miller's cardio is really bad too, and I just don't think he's going to put a pace on Hernandez. Even if he tried to, I think Hernandez would kind of beat him up. I think Hernandez has the finishing upside. I make him a pretty big favorite here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you 100%. And like, I love Jim Miller. I've bet on him. He's probably one of the fighters I've bet on the most in his time in the UFC. The guy, it seems like he's a guy the market's always been too low on. But at the same time, he's 39 years old now. You know, you look at his most, recent run of opponents, and Miller's fought, I mean, Nicholas Mota, nothing special. Donald Cerrone's corpse, Eric Gonzalez, Roosevelt Roberts, Clay Guida, Jason Gonzalez, Alex White. Those are his last 6 wins. You know, the guy's getting victories against people who were just not meaningful opponents. And on top of that, he's getting hurt in virtually every fight. He's surviving it, and he's bouncing back and winning some of those fights, but he's still getting wobbled consistently. And every time in recent years, he's taken a decent step up in competition, he's lost. And Hernandez, it's almost the inverse on the other side. He's on a losing streak, but it's like Thiago Moises, Drew Dober, Renato Moicano, Billy Quarantillo. Like, these are the guys Hernandez is dropping L's to. Like, legitimately.
A lot of those fights were competitive too.
Yeah, I mean, the Moicano fight was very tight until he finished him. And I didn't even think he gassed bad in that fight. I mean, the Moises fight was pretty close, and he didn't look like he slowed down there. He just couldn't kind of figure him out. Right. And like Billy, he's gonna break anybody. Same with Dober. Like, we know for a fact that Miller's not gonna come out here and push anywhere near the kind of pace that a Dober will or a Quarantillo will. I think even in the grappling, that's normally where you get scared fading Miller. I don't think he really has much chance to wrestle Hernandez. I kind of think, if anything, Hernandez could probably just take him down and sit in half guard. Like, Miller really can't get off his back. He just kind of throws up arm bars. And yeah, I mean, on the feet, Hernandez is faster. He hits harder. I agree. He's more technical. I don't know. It's almost like how Miller loses every time he steps up. Look at Hernandez every time he stepped down in competition. Breeden, Gritzmacher. I mean, he even beat Trinaldo, but every time this guy takes a step down, he completely womps. Every time Miller takes a step up, he tends to get rolled. I think Hernandez minus 300 is a lot more fair. I think if he's smart, he would just grapple him, but I don't expect him to. Any thoughts on the under for you? I've heard a lot of people talk about that, but I don't know how strongly to feel about it.
I think at the early price at like plus 130, it was fine. I'm not super passionate about it. Dude, just in general lately, I haven't liked betting under 1.5. Like, as a whole, like, if you get stuck on the cage for a couple minutes, it's like, all right, like, that's already a huge chunk of the time. Like, and it sounds weird, but I've just in general not been liking under 1.5. So I would almost rather play it in like a squash match. Like, it didn't hit last week, but I bet Danilo Marquez under 1.5 at plus money. And obviously, he choked the guy out and the guy didn't tap, so it went over instead of under. But like, those are the kind of spots I want to target under 1.5. So I'm moving forward rather than like a minus 200. Like, I'd rather it be like a minus 600 where I feel like it's a squash match.
Yeah, I completely get that. Moving on, I think you do have a pretty passionate take here, so I'll let you start it off. We got William Knight taking on Marcin Prachnio. What are your thoughts?
I like Knight. I think he should be the favorite here. I think he's more athletic, stronger, hits harder, bigger. I think he fights through fatigue better. I'm not saying his cardio is great, but I think just he can get through it better than Prachnio. I like the under 2.5 also. I think it's going to be a swing fest where I mean, Prachnio got hurt by Ike Villanueva in the first like 30 seconds of their fight. So I like Knight and I like under from the side and total perspective. I think Knight's going to knock him out. What do you think?
I mean, my initial instinct when I saw the fight was Prachnio. As you know, I'm like as anti Will Knight as it gets. Yeah, I bet Grishin big against him. In a power rankings of all 205 pounders, he's probably towards the bottom for me a Knight. I just don't think he does a lot very well. But then it's like, I went and taped Prachnio, and I mean, he is the better striker while he's fresh, but he's got about 4 minutes of gas. I mean, you saw him, he was done after about 3.5 minutes with Lins from Lins grappling aggressively. he's still got, I kind of think people think the chin issues are behind him, but, he got hurt by Linge. He got hurt by like Villanueva. He gets hurt every single fight. And in the grappling, like, I'm not passionate that Knight can dominate him there. I don't know about that, but I know he's going to go for it. And so it's Prachnio's output while he's fresh versus Knight's power and potential grappling. I think Knight's got a real chance to, chin him in this kind of fight, but I don't know. I don't really feel very strongly about it. I kind of think there's more finishing upside on the Knight side. And even though they're both bad gassers, I do sort of think Knight having more success late via grappling is live, but I just can't get past the output part of Prachnio. So yeah, I think I said it to you earlier in the week, but I think 55% on either side for me is fine. So like, I don't really have a strong take on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Moving on. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't expect to have a strong take on into it.
It's funny because like I thought Prachnio was better than he was, because like even like when I was looking at OSP Linge, I was like, okay, that's a decent win for Linge, and then I taped it. It's like, oh man, Prachnio's he's pretty fucking awful himself. I don't know. I don't feel strongly about it. Moving on though, good fight here. Josh Parisian, Jamal Pogues. Well, I don't know if it's a good fight, and I don't really know what to make of it because like my initial instinct. No. Yes. My initial instinct when I saw the line was Pogues should absolutely maul this guy. Parisian got mauled by Dontel Mays, which made me think Pogues, who's initially a grappler by trade, should be able to do the same. But you look at it more, and it's like Pogues, I do think he has most of the dominant grappling scope in the fight. I think if someone's going to win 30-27 fairly easily, it's probably Pogues. But at the same time, he's gassy. He's not a natural heavyweight. And then like you watch that Contenders fight, and it's like this grappler just came out here and threw the occasional jab out there for 15 minutes, didn't really attempt to take down, just kind of almost let himself lose a close decision to that Brazilian, maybe because it's Contender Series, but it's like he didn't even swarm and try to get him out of there or anything. So I don't know. Parisian's more experienced. His calf kicks can probably trouble him. I can't bet Parisian after seeing the Knight fight, but I think it's kind of a sketchy fight. What do you think?
Yeah, and I did see that today that Josh Parisian said he was having I don't even know how to pronounce it, heart palpitations. Hopefully I'm saying that right.
Yeah,
but like that's kind of crazy, like to be saying that going into a fight week. But yeah, I'm with you. Like Pogue should just top time him, but Parisian probably has a cardio advantage and a size advantage. So I'm not dying to lay this price on him.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, co-main event of the evening: Zach Pauga, Jordan Wright. Any thoughts here?
I bet the under at a better price than what's available right now. I think I took -140. Like, because Wright went over 1.5 one time in his career, like all of a sudden this isn't like a very likely outcome now. You just know what he is. He could hit hard in the beginning. He runs out of cardio. His defense is terrible. I think Pauga knocks him out. I was excited when I saw the opening line of like -190, -200. Like I thought I was hoping that held, but it didn't. Like I think -300 is about right here. I think Pauga first round KO.
Yeah, I bet the under as well. More or less the same thoughts. And even to get that over, both guys had to go through absolute hell for that over to hit in his last fight. I think you and I were chatting before the last fight. I'd mentioned to you I liked over. And then afterwards, I was like, over was 100% wrong. Like, it got there, but it was definitely not the side. And watching it here, it's like, unless Wright massively overcorrects the other way and just goes from being kind of a guy who's pushing a pace, whether it's grappling or striking constantly, I feel like it's got to be about -200 to go over. I do, in terms of the fight, kind of think it's interesting because, to your point, I think on the one hand, -300 is right, just because it's hard to rely on Wright to have more than 4 to 5 minutes of gas. And if that's the case, it's like, how likely is Wright to really finish this fight in round one? Can you go past like 20%? I even think that's probably on the high end. But it is a weird fight because Wright obviously is dangerous, but he's going up to light heavyweight. Pauga's coming down from heavyweight. Yeah, and which is kind of freaky, and Wright has no defense. I just also expect, I know Pauga hasn't been an output guy in the past, but Wright has a tendency to bring that out of people. I think these guys are going to bang, and I think someone goes down as well.
Yeah.
Moving on, I'm going to stick with you because I know you have a stronger take than I do here as well. We got the main event. We got Jessica Andrade taking on Erin Blanchfield. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah,
under 1.5. Sorry, under 1.5. Yeaterson asked.
Yeah, under 1.5. I love Blanchfield in this spot. I make her the favorite outright. I took early price, not even really early price, but a couple days ago, plus 160, plus 165. Like I said, I think she's going to win. Andrade's taking this fight on a week's notice, didn't have a camp to prepare for a grappler to the caliber of Blanchfield. If you take a look back at the Valentina Shevchenko fight I was actually at, she just absolutely dumpstered her in the grappling. Took her down at will, 7 for 7 on takedowns. Andrade could literally like try to run away and it wasn't working. Like Valentina was just kind of running up to her, grabbing a body lock, driving her to the ground. So I expect Blanchfield to have similar success. On the feet, it's a little scary because Andrade is the better striker, but Blanchfield is improving on the feet. And yeah, I just don't see a fight where Blanchfield doesn't have grappling success. It's like, okay, Andrade probably has some finishing upside on the feet, but standing KOs at 125 women's 125 aren't very common. So I just can't unsee that Valentina Shevchenko fight where she's just getting taken down and taken down and taken down and taken down over and over and over. So I'll talk a little bit about what I like and don't like about Blanchfield's top game. I think when she gets takedowns, she's great in guard, passes right to half guard, can even get a crucifix, side control, does all that really well. The one thing I wish she did a little bit more often is when people give their back to stand up, I wish she put legs in, because Andrade does that every single time when she gets taken down. Like, she doesn't really know what to do from her back, so she kind of just tries to flip over and stand back up. I think if Blanchfield puts legs in, body triangles in, and just that's the round for sure. But I only see her do it sometimes, and it's like frustrating to watch on tape because she's such a positionally sound grappler where I want to just yell at the screen like, put legs in, put legs in, put legs in. I think it was it was either the Miranda fight or the Alpar fight where she didn't put 2 legs in until literally the last 10 seconds of the fight, and then she like immediately flattened her out. But also, she's 23, she's getting better every fight. I do see improvements fight to fight. When she first got into the UFC, I bet on her against Alpar, and then after that fight I was like, oh, there's going to be a time where I bet against her, and she's just done all the right things. I think this is her coming out party. I think she's going to beat up Andrade on the ground.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I don't feel quite as strongly. It's funny because I keep trying to fade Andrade at 125 because I do, and I have believed that she's not really a real 125er. You know, she's 5'1". I mean, like you, I can't really unsee the Valentina fight out of my head. Like that was just such a horrible look. What I ask myself with this fight, because I mean, I agree with most of the grappling takes in terms of Erin's positional control, is one, is Erin going to be able to put her on the back foot? Because I mean, as I'm sure you know, it's a lot harder to shoot takedowns if someone's pressuring you in your face, you know, keeping you against the cage, than if you're going forward on them. 2, beyond that, does Erin have 5-round cardio? And I don't really know what the answer is to that, because while it looks pretty good, it's almost like Miranda Maverick. It's the one time she's gone 15 in the UFC. Didn't really, or I guess Alpar as well, but neither of them really presented a meaningful threat in return to Blanchfield in those fights. And then on top of that, it's like going from beating Molly McCann to facing Andrade is obviously a gigantic step up in competition here. I do think stylistically it should be a favorable fight for Blanchfield. But for me, it's like between those 3 factors, I'm a bit nervous about it. And it's like outside of Valentina, nobody in her career has really dominated Andrade on the mat like that. So it comes down, it's like, is Erin like special? I think she might be, but I don't have as much conviction about it. My view on the fight is more take a look at like how the fight plays out. And, you know, like I would rather lay Andrade after a round, seeing her dominating at like -200, then play her -135 before the fight. And in the same like vein, if Blanchfield gets her down early, and can dominate her on the mat. I think I'd rather take Blanchfield at like minus 150 or minus 185 after a round. It's like if she can dominate her on the ground and control her there, then she's going to look minus 300, right? Like she's going to look dominant. I kind of feel like whichever way the fight plays out, it'll be dominant. And so like I'm almost okay laying a worse line live with either fighter than I am before the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I just think that it's one of those spots where we could look back on this one and say, oh my God, she was a huge fit, which it doesn't seem like you disagree with that, where it's like, oh my God, Erin in retrospect is a huge favorite in this fight. Whereas like, I don't really see a fight where Erin doesn't get any takedowns. Like that would actually surprise me. I'm not saying it can't happen, but that would surprise me. Like the way Andrade just comes forward, like what's going to stop Erin from just dropping down and shooting a double leg? I'm not saying she's going to get every single one. She's not the best wrestler in the world, but she's a good wrestler and she's strong and she is a real 125 pounder. So I just think she's going to get takedowns. And really the only big question mark for me in this fight is what happens when Andrade gives her back to stand up. Because if she keeps getting back up and Blanchfield doesn't keep putting hooks in, it could get a little bit dicier because then it's just more time on the feet, more time for Andrade to start landing stuff, more times Erin has to exert energy to keep bringing her back down. So I think that's what's the story of the fight, is what's going to happen when Erin gets her back. Because I really do see that position coming into play at like a very high clip. I mean, Andrade could knock her out before that happens, I guess. She could just stop every takedown, and I'd be impressed and surprised. But I think more often than not, like that's the story of the fight is what happens once they're down there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. And yeah, to your point, because it's like if Andrade can get up easy, she's got the pace to push 25 minutes here. Mm-hmm. Whereas, well, I mean, Erin might. I mean, and if she can, I kind of think if Erin can maul Andrade like that, then I mean, I think she's an interesting threat for the rest of the division anyway, but she's going to be in a position a lot faster than I assumed here. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I'm rooting for Blanchfield. I'm rooting for you here. New Jersey girl, trains like 10 minutes away from where I live. So it's an exciting fight. We'll see what happens. Andrew, you want to shout anything out before we get off?
Yeah, can I just answer this comment really quick of what if Andrade takes Erin down? I really, really like the way she holds position and like the clinch and from bottom. Like she does all the right things technically with like getting underhooks, getting back to her feet. Like she's been taken down in fights before and she always gets right back to her feet. Every time she's in the clinch, she's always first thing is getting underhooks. I just really like her technique in that spot. So I think if Andrade does take Erin down, she's going to get right back up.
Yeah, same. I mean, Andrade's not a great control grappler to begin with, so it would be pretty surprising to see her control Erin on top. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. Andrew, you want to shout out your stuff where people can find you?
Yeah, my Twitter's at Bets and Picks MMA. My YouTube channel is Andrew Gombas Bets. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, thanks for coming out. So follow Andrew there. Follow me at MMA Fox. Guys, if you like the show, please drop and subscribe. Like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Good luck on your bets this weekend, and we'll see you next week, same time. Take it easy. Peace.